So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. Today we're going to talk about communication for those with dementia. So the title of my presentation is Learn to Speak Dementia. And it's interesting because I remember a while back, I had somebody ask me, I was traveling to a foreign country, and they said, well, don't you find it hard to communicate when you're in these really odd places? And I said, no, I can speak every language. And she said, you can speak every language? And I said, yes, because I know how to speak dementia. And if you can speak dementia, you can speak literally any language in the world. Very cool. And I'm going to teach you how to do that today. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay. So as the disease progresses, and it can be multiple different diseases that people have, right? It's not just Alzheimer's, although that is the most common. It could be Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. It could be Parkinson's disease. It could be frontal temporal. It could be, Huntington's disease. There are many, many diseases that people will have dementia as a symptom of that disease. So when that communication becomes more challenging, and it will constantly be changing, we need to adapt our approach to communication because they may understand something one minute and not understand it the next minute. So it's interesting because a lot of the families that I meet, they say, oh, he's stubborn. Because yesterday he could follow my instructions perfectly. He's being stubborn. Or he just doesn't want to do it. But that's not the case. It's not a choice. And it depends on the brain and if it can reroute that information or not. So it's kind of like your GPS, right? Your GPS can recalculate and find another way to get the information. Sometimes our brain will do that and sometimes it won't. So they're not being stubborn. And this is something that we need to teach our families when you're out there working with them, right? Because a lot of times they aren't aware. They don't have the kind of education that you do about what's going on in that brain. So the more that we can help them, then when we're not there and they have a better understanding of what's going on, they're going to have a more peaceful time when you're not there helping them all the time. So when we're talking about communication, there are certain things that we can do to help that process go a lot easier. So some of them are use much shorter, simpler sentences. So here's an example. Hi, Mrs. Jones. Let's get a shower, get dressed, we'll have a quick breakfast, and then we have to be at the doctor's by 4. And she's just sitting there staring at you. She maybe got the at 4 part, or maybe, hey, we have to, and she's still stuck somewhere there, right? So we need to break that down. So first of all, we're only going to talk about the first task. We're not going to tell her about the whole day that's laid out before her because she can't comprehend that. We're just going to start on the first part. Get dressed. So we went from, hey, we have to get dressed and go to the doctor, to get dressed. Or maybe it's here, and you hand her shirt, right? So using very short sentences and focusing on those keywords, dressed. And then after that task is completed, then we can talk about the next step. Go for a ride, go to the doctor. We want to slow down our speaking. We don't want to rattle off the sentences too quickly so that their brain can kind of keep up. Speak clearly so they can hear you. As we know, a lot of seniors have hearing impairments on top of their dementia. So we want to make sure that we're trying to speak clearly so that they can focus on our words. And one of the biggest things we need to do is make sure that we give them enough time to process the information and understand what we're talking about. So a really good example of that would be maybe an aide in a care community, right? So let's say they have to get a whole bunch of people down to the dining room for breakfast, right? And they come in and knock on the door. Hi, Mrs. Jones, it's Judy. Oh, and you open the blinds and you check the garbage. Do you need anything? Are you thirsty? Would you like a glass of water? Okay, well, get dressed real quick and I'll see you in a few minutes. I'll be right back. And she walks out the room and there's Mrs. Jones a couple minutes later. Hello? Is someone there? Right? She's on a delayed reaction. So you're in there buzzing around, and by the time you leave, you're like, oh, she doesn't need anything, right? And she's like, oh wait, she's just catching up. She's just now realizing you're in the room and you're already gone. The disappearing aid, right? The disappearing aid trick. Using signs can be very helpful, right? So maybe we have somebody who's wandering. You can put a big old stop sign right on the door. We've known stop signs almost our entire lives, right? So that can be very helpful. Not always, right? Sometimes it's, let's see if it works, let's see if it doesn't work. But a nice old stop sign. You can put signs on dressers, so to help them get dressed. You can label them. You can put a picture of bras and underwear. You can put a picture of shirts. You can put a picture of socks and pajamas. You can do the same thing in the kitchen. Put a picture of the silverware and the cups and the plates to let them know where things are located. You can put a picture of a toilet outside of the bathroom, right? A lot of people forget where their bathroom is. So a nice big picture of a toilet on the outside can help them, right? Yeah. You can help them find a word or offer a guess, which we have to be a little careful on this one, right? Because some people appreciate that you're helping them get the words out. Others, they get frustrated. Like, stop interrupting me. I can get it if you give me enough time, right? So you have to kind of feel the client out. Sometimes they appreciate the help. Sometimes they don't. So if they don't appreciate the help, make sure you back off and give them enough time. And usually they'll get there. And that's the real benefit of home care, right? Because we can give them pretty much all the time in the world that they need. Whereas in a care community setting, you may have 15 people that you have to get ready in a matter of time. So we can let Mr. Jones take 20 minutes to put his shoes on if we need to. All right, so the next one is, we want to try and set them up for success, right? We want to try and get that client in a position where they can communicate with you. So when we think about communication is a 50-50 exchange of information between two cognitively intact people, right? So if you and I were going to have a conversation, we would go back and forth and we would have a great conversation. However, if one of us is suffering from dementia or any other kind of cognitive disabilities, it's no longer an even exchange of information. It becomes lopsided, right? So if we can incorporate all of these things and help them to tip those scales so it's a little bit more even, right? It's going to be better for everybody. So when you're going to set them up for success, you want to make sure that you have their attention. So if you go back just a few minutes ago and rewind, right, when we talked about the aid coming in, and they're gone, that's where you want to make sure that you're giving them enough time. You're giving them enough time to know that you're in the room and that you're talking to them and that you're present. We want to make sure that the environment is nice and quiet. So for people with dementia, they hear everything, all the background noises that you can hear, like the traffic outside, the humming of the air conditioner, maybe you hear a phone ringing in the background or something, and my voice. To a person with dementia, all of those sounds are at an equal level. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what your life would be like if you couldn't pull out that one person's voice above everything else? That's a lot of the reasons why we have so many behaviors. So the more we can quiet the environment, the better it is. So turning the TV off or down, any kind of background noises, trying to limit them as much as possible so that you can get their attention. Only one person speak at a time. How many people have had the helpful family members all coming over at once, right? And they all want to help, which is great. And nobody knows that loved one better than them, right? Nobody knows them better than them. But when you have 3 daughters and a caregiver and the client all trying to help them take a shower, it's not going to work. There's just too much going on. There's too many voices. And like we just talked about, right? If we rewind again, we just talked about they can't pull out one voice. They can't listen to just one person. Family gatherings, parties, oh, that's another whole presentation. But one person needs to speak at a time so that they can hear whoever's talking. And let them know that you're listening. they so often, they want to be heard. Who doesn't want to be heard? We all want to be heard, right? How frustrated do you get when you feel like you're trying to get your point across to somebody and you know they're not listening? It's really frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Tremendously frustrating. So think of a person with cognitive disabilities and they're trying to tell you something and they just can't. They can't find the words. It doesn't come out their mouth. They're saying their head, but it doesn't come out their mouth. Or they don't know how to tell you something's going on. That's where the behaviors come from, right? So let them know that you're listening. I hear you. I'm listening, right? And that alone will help calm them down, because at least if they can't even tell you what's going on, they know that you care enough that you tell them that you're listening and you're trying to understand what they're
Hey, how did you like that video? Did you learn something new today? Be sure to hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up, and make sure that you hit the notification bell, because if you do that, then you'll get a little ding when there's a new video out.